Good day. Thank you for tuning into this 2019 General Election Candidate Forum for the City of Olympia City Council, position number 3. The forum is presented by the League of Women Voters of Thurston County and Thurston Community Media. The League is a nonprofit organization that encourages the informed and active participation of citizens in their government. The League neither supports nor opposes candidates or parties. We are nonpartisan. The League registers new voters, works to get out the vote, studies issues, and advocates for its positions with governing bodies. Despite its name, the League is open to both men and women of 16 and up. I'm Peggy Bruden from the League, and I'll be moderating this forum. The candidates for the City of Olympia Council, position number 3, are Dani Madrone and Matt Goldenberg. For this forum, each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening statement. Then I'll ask questions in alternating order. The person first asked the question will have 2 minutes for a response, followed by 1 minute from the other candidate. There will be 1 minute then for closing statements. We'll begin with opening statements from the candidates, beginning with Dani Madrone and followed by Matt Goldenberg. Go ahead, Dani.
My name's Dani Madrone. I've lived in the area for 15 years, and in that time I have studied science, sustainability, and public policy at the Evergreen State College. I have built a career in recovering Puget Sound, and I have worked on issues of climate change, ecosystem recovery, food systems, housing, transportation, and many other things. And I have also built a lot of strong relationships in the community and with other jurisdictions. On my platform, the top priority for Olympia is homelessness and housing. It's a personal issue for me. I lived for many years sharing a single bedroom with my daughter so that we could afford to stay in Olympia. And I would like to see specific goals in our comprehensive plan on how we address housing affordability for a variety of income levels, starting at area median income and working our way down to no income. And I would also like to see a diversity of housing options in Olympia. For homelessness, I think what we need in Olympia is a crisis management plan that brings clarity, accountability, and support for everybody. I would like to see the use of evidence-based practices, and I would like to see Olympia building on that body of evidence by doing performance measurement with the various programs that have been put into place. I'm also interested in climate change and the environment and will support decisions that are based in science. And I would like to see the City of Olympia supporting better conversations in our community. I think there's a role for local government to host opportunities for people to come together through disagreement and find shared interests and values. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt, go ahead.
So my name is Matt Goldenberg. I am a candidate for position 3 in Olympia City Council. I am currently a licensed psychologist. I wanted to, in my opening today, talk a little bit more about what's changed since I started running for this campaign, because a lot of you know more about my work history, and certainly my Facebook friend list has tripled since I started running. So I know that many of you are forming personal relationships with me as well. I just wanted to mention that since the campaign started, I have stopped working in private practice and stopped teaching, and instead took a job with Adult Protective Services, in which my roles are to build a program that will help shore up the vicarious trauma that investigators deal with at that agency. I think this is important because I wanted to highlight my ongoing commitment to prioritizing work for the most vulnerable people in our state, and I'm really happy to see that this change is happening here in Washington, that we'll have this new program. It highlights my commitments, but also my areas of expertise, and I believe that my experience in doing trauma work, particularly with very vulnerable people, will be a great complement to the current City Council. And I also would like to reference my website, www.electmattgoldenberg.com. Thank you.
Thank you both. We'll start with the questions, and perhaps I'll start with Matt. As part of the Thurston Climate Mitigation Plan, along with Tumwater, Lacey, and the county. Olympia is working with Thurston Regional Planning Council to address climate change issues. What action items do you support, and how do you propose to further these efforts? 2 minutes.
Sure. One of the most important priorities within these plans is to ensure that the public has a good education and awareness of what is happening. What I'm noticing is that there is an increasing amount of urgency around these issues, as there absolutely needs to be, but that doesn't necessarily translate to the people in our community understanding the good governance and the leadership that is occurring in terms of climate change. So one of the skills that I think that I bring and that I would really like to see the City Council embrace more is the communication with the public about exactly what is happening, as well as to educate all generations about the changes that are happening.
Okay, thank you. Dani?
Well, in addition to the climate targets that were set through the Thurston Regional Planning Council, the Olympia City Council has taken an additional goal to be carbon neutral by 2020. By 2040. And we're not going to make it by 2020 for sure. But so that's an additional obligation beyond what is working on countywide. And things that I would support around that include renewable energy. I'm really excited about the work of Olympia Community Solar, retrofitting older buildings so that we're able to keep in heat and cold air more efficiently. More support for biking, walking, and public transportation, which involves a lot of work around urban density. And I agree with Matt around the public education, because a lot of our individual choices contribute to climate change. The City of Olympia needs to be making budgetary decisions that back up these goals. And we need to be setting measurable actions and targets so that we can track our progress.
Thank you. The second question, and Dani, we'll start with you. How do you harmonize tax exemptions for builders and developers of market rate and above downtown properties with the loss of income for needed city services? How would you propose to resolve these issues?
So what you're talking about is the multifamily tax exemption, which Olympia has had on the books for a number of years, and only recently have we seen development, especially in the downtown area, to make use of those tax exemptions. And there's an 8-year tax exemption that a developer that builds housing that is even market with no requirements around affordability can get an 8-year tax exemption. And if they take a 12-year tax exemption, they would be required to put in some affordable units. Now that we're seeing the development of some housing, and that's an environmental initiative, we should remember that when we're able to put more housing in the urban core, we are addressing issues around sprawl. And so what we should be doing right now is assessing this program, seeing if we've reached the point where this tax exemption has lived its life, and then potentially change it so that we specifically put affordability requirements onto the tax exemption, as has been done in Seattle and other cities.
Thank you. Matt, 1 minute.
Thank you. So in reference to what Dani was just saying, I mean, she's right in terms of looking at like the progress in the development of why we had these tax exemptions. But at this point, I think that our time is up with our 8-year tax exemptions. The longer tax exemption that would be available for affordable housing clearly hasn't been utilized. And we need to understand why that is, when there is so clearly a community need and a community outrage around ensuring that we have affordable housing. I also have concerns that we have many builders who say the impact fees are too high, and yet I should just mention that a large number of our high schoolers and middle schoolers are spending time in outdoor trailers all day, while those impact fees are supposed to be building new classroom space for those new residents. And so it seems to me that the landscape is showing that the fees that we already have associated are actually not meeting the needs. I agree that we need a full analysis on that tax exemption.
Thank you. And the next question goes to you. Olympia has a reputation as a progressive city, but we are increasingly becoming a place where low-income working families can't afford to live. A recently publicized example is a mother and her children who had to leave their small apartment, which was sold and no longer affordable to her, and then go live in a travel trailer with a family member. How do you propose to keep Olympia affordable for working families?
One of the most vital aspects of a community is that you need to be able to live where you work. You know, we need to understand this from the environmental perspective, certainly, to be able to utilize public transportation more easily, but also from the moral perspective. I came to Olympia fleeing Seattle like many other people did because I needed a functioning school system for my children, and we wanted a home, and Olympia was the place to do that. There's a lot of things that I think we're inheriting in terms of major problems, but I think there would be room to still look at, first of all, increasing the minimum wage. That's a very important issue. Obviously, it's a state issue. The very slow progress of raising the state minimum wage is not enough to meet the current need, but I would like to see city council members who support those types of initiatives. We also need to talk about job creation. There's a stagnant problem in our economy as far as I see it.
Okay, thank you. Dani, go ahead.
Olympia needs to address in its comprehensive plan some real targets around affordability. Right now what we have is value statements, which is great, but we can't really make a plan around that. I'd like to see an economic analysis of Olympia that shows how many housing units we need for people at area median income, 80% AMI, 60-40, all the way down to zero. Because then once we know how many units are needed, we can actually make a plan to address that. Part of that could potentially be accomplished through a multifamily tax exemption, which targets affordability and affordable housing. We can work with the housing authority to build more social housing, public housing for people who at those different levels of income and not just at the lowest end of the spectrum. And also making sure that we have diverse housing options throughout the community. I have been that single mother who has almost had to leave Olympia because there weren't a lot of places for me to live. And okay, I'm being told to stop. So it's a very, very important issue for me.
Well, the next question is related, and it goes to you. During the recent legislative session, the Olympia City Council urged state legislators to enact state laws limiting the ability of citizens to legally challenge certain city ordinances they believe to be illegal and detrimental to their neighborhoods. Do you support this kind of legislation? Why or why not?
I think it's important to acknowledge that the legislation was much broader than just that component of it. But I also think it's important to know people are concerned about the ability to be able to appeal specific projects that take place in their communities. And this legislation does not remove the ability to do that. It does remove the ability for the changes to things like building codes and other issues dealing with zoning. And one thing that happened up in Seattle was there was an appeal for more accessory dwelling units that didn't go through a thorough environmental review. And after a year and a half of city staff and resources and a lot of work done, they found that the environmental impact was minimal and probably even better for the environment. So in that year and a half that Seattle could have been building more housing that is more affordable than a single family home, it was a lost opportunity. So I do support that legislation along with our local legislators and other cities and environmental groups, labor organizations, and a lot of other. There was a lot of support for that initiative.
Okay, Matt, 1 minute.
Can you just repeat the question?
Okay. During the recent legislative session, the Olympia City Council urged state legislatures to enact laws limiting the ability of citizens to legally challenge certain city ordinances they believe to be illegal and detrimental to their neighborhoods. Do you support this kind of legislation? And if so, why or why not? Or
Okay.
if not, why not?
Okay. I would like to be able to take a look at the proposed legislation more closely than I have, but I can tell you that the community is pretty concerned about this, and I understand why. I think people are having an impending sense that their voices aren't being heard. There's been, monies lost and time and energy lost in back and forth court fights that seem really antithetical to how we understand ourselves as a community. I have some concerns about the particular legislation, the way that it's being described to me.
Thank you. Now, the next question, we'll start with you, but we're going to give everybody 2 minutes because just to even things out, so that everybody's had equal time. So here it is. The issue of homelessness is well publicized. How would you propose to address some of the underlying causes of homelessness, such as poverty, job loss, addictions, mental illness, and so forth?
Sure. Some of those underlying causes are also big catches like capitalism and sexism and racism, that I would just wanted to say that those are very important to build into the causes of houselessness. And I wanted to say, this is reference to houselessness because people do consider the Puget Sound their home. And that sense of placehood is really important. I've had years of experience working directly with houseless people who have all sorts of complicated lives. One of the things that I find really frustrating as a voter is that the discussion seems to center around more housing, more housing, more housing. And of course, that's an important issue, but anyone who's worked directly with houseless communities understands that the issues and the needs that they have are way more robust than just getting a key to a place to go inside. Many, many people need rehabilitative services. I spent a day shadowing at the Needle Exchange. We have an amazing program here with dedicated and beautiful staff who work hard and are greatly misunderstood by the community. That's an educational aspect that we're missing. We also have some new programs with a great director that we're running in downtown Olympia, such as the Familiar Faces program. That is also very, very important. I would like to see a city council that speaks out more against the divisiveness and the anger that's directed at our poor communities. Particularly to bring more of a trauma-informed policies into place. It seems to me like those issues are very important. And having knocked on lots of doors this season, I can tell that people are really angry and feel that nothing is being done, when in fact there's a lot being done. It will take us a long, long time to get out of this. I think Ty was right when she said that we're going to expect to have sort of unmanaged campsites for quite a long time.
Thank you. Okay, Dani, 2 minutes.
To address the issues around addiction and mental health, I think one of the top things that we need to do is address issues around stigma. And we also need to recognize that there's a big impact on our community as a result of these being such prevalent problems. So we need to recognize that there are vulnerable people who absolutely need help. And there are also many people in the community who are impacted by having a lot of these behaviors out in the community. I've talked with a lot of business owners in the downtown area who are really struggling, they are compassionate people and they do want to help, but at the same time they are struggling. And I think that is building onto this divide significantly. I support programs that are supportive of people. Matt mentioned the Needle Exchange, and there's also the Butte Clinic in terms of addiction services. And I also support the new programs around Familiar Faces and the Crisis Response Unit to support people with mental health needs. In terms of loss of jobs and stagnant wages, I'd like to see some local workforce development programs. We have a lot of needs in our community that could really be addressed by building the labor force. That includes the construction of housing, climate change initiatives, local food production, and even cleaning up public spaces that are shared by everybody. So I would like to see some work being done around there so that we can bring more people into the workforce, develop skills, and build up wages through that kind of experience.
Okay, thank you. It's time now for your closing statements. And so, Dani, you want to just go ahead?
Sure, yeah. So my name is Dani Madrone, and it's been really great running for Olympia City Council and getting to know a lot of people out in the community and building on the over a decade of work that I have done locally. I am endorsed by elected officials from U.S. Congress all the way down to local school boards, and that includes state legislators, county elected officials, and a majority of city councils in Olympia, Lacey, and Tumwater. You can find out more about my campaign at DaniMadrone.com or shoot me an email at votemadrone@gmail.com. I'm happy to have any conversation.
Thank you. Okay, Matt, take it away.
I just want to thank all the viewers for watching this. We are in a call to action, I believe, at this point. And having lived in Olympia for the last few years and things that I've noticed, I've seen fellow community members outside working hard, protesting, fracking. I have seen the protectors of the Salish Sea recently, right? We've seen people out protesting the terrible treatment of travelers and immigrants to our country. We have seen larger than ever LGBT pride festivals. We have a lot to be proud of the work that we've done. And what I want to encourage people to think about is like, what is your call to action now? I hope part of that is voting.
Thank you. Thanks so much to both of you for participating in the League of Women Voters Primary Election Forum for the City of Olympia, Council Position Number 3. We encourage viewers to vote in the general election, November 5th, 2019. Remember, ballots are postage free, so just put your ballot in the mail. The League particularly thanks Thurston Community Media for their ongoing support and assistance.